How's it going, everybody, and welcome to episode 295 of the Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode is one I'm looking forward to. There's probably going to be several different threads of conversation here, and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Shane Hatton. Now, Shane is the creator of a garden called Bosco's Garden in County Kilkenny, and the garden itself has a brilliant story. It's a permaculture food forest garden growing veg, and he follows principles of permaculture, has been studying permaculture for 15 years. As you guys know who've been listening for a long time, permaculture is a topic that we've kind of covered on and off in bits and pieces of episodes, but not in depth as such. So we'll chat about permaculture a little bit today, specifically about Shane's own garden, which is called Bosco's Garden, and it's going to be very interesting. As I said, it could be lots of different threads and avenues we go down here. But Shane, you're very, very welcome to Master My Garden podcast.
Thanks a million, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, lovely to have you. As I say, we've only recently connected, but I've spent quite a few hours over the last week or two on your YouTube channel, and I suppose that it'll be no come as no surprise to people who have or will go on to follow your channel that you're also a filmmaker, because the quality of the video and the editing is superb. But the main channel is called Bosco's Garden, and it's a YouTube channel. You have roughly 12,000 subscribers. It's telling the story of Bosco's Garden on a day-to-day basis, and also now over the coming months rolling out a series of longer videos on other gardens that sort of follow regenerative or permaculture principles. So it's really, really interesting channel. As I say, I spent several hours there over the last week or two. But tell us about the garden first. Where did it start? What's the story behind it, and so on.
So the garden, it started as a polytunnel in my parents' garden, which we're on just 3/4 of an acre here. Is what we started with, and a raised bed back in around 2012. My brother and I, and we, got by for a few years. We grew, a few nice bits. We had more failures than we had successes. So, and we just learned how to do like little things. Sometimes I bought plants from the garden center and just planted them in, and we
Yeah.
had, that.
And this is your very first kind of
Yeah, this was
effort at
learning as you.
growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
We were interested in sustainability and growing our own food and growing healthy food at home, fresh. And yeah, just over the years, I learned a little bit here and there, year after year, and it was kind of a bit half hour started.
Yeah.
Doing other stuff. And then in 2020, we had, what happened in 2020. And I had the opportunity to put in a pond that I wanted to make for years. I wanted to attract frogs and hedgehogs, and I knew that water would be a way to do that, and they'd eat slugs. And like I had a basic understanding of
Yeah.
permaculture and ecosystems and the balance of things. And I dug that pond, and we just kind of went from there. We started growing vegetables. We had just gotten an acre beside my granddad had left to my parents, and that was just an empty field that had just been fenced off. We'd put two rescue donkeys in there the year before, built a little shed for them, and we started growing. We started the first year doing big drills of spuds, cabbage, carrots, parsnips, beetroot, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And was there an idea, like, were you gonna thinking you were gonna sell these, or was this all for your own consumption, or what was the?
No intention of selling it at that stage. We borrowed the plow off the neighbor. He had like an old plow that was sitting in a ditch. We pulled it out of a load of brambles and got it working again. A drill plow. The ones they have the tubes, and you just put
Yeah.
down the
Drop the potato down
potatoes.
the tube. I,
Yeah,
I I often sat on the back of one of them. It's actually
yeah, yeah.
it's very therapeutic.
Yeah, it's
Um,
nice. Yeah, it's
yeah,
grand.
it
Like
is.
it's quite comfy.
It's
Yeah, you put a little cushion on the seat. You're grand.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
happy out.
yeah. Cushion now. I think from memory it was a bit of straw or a bit of hay was on our seat, but it's very therapeutic going up, and you're just dropping the potatoes in.
Yeah,
Yeah, brilliant.
yeah. Uh, And yeah, then the next year I started getting, I'd tried no-dig gardening years and years before, based off of what they were doing in Australia,
Hmm.
the permaculture guys over there, and they were using straw, like
Yeah.
just putting straw bedding down on top of a bed to
Yeah.
suppress weeds. And but I tried that in Ireland, and I just got
Slugs.
Slug City.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I put out some cabbage transplants and came back the next day, and where are they gone? Like, yeah, that
yeah.
sort of
No,
thing.
that's incredible because I'm actually doing a talk this week on no dig gardening, and yeah, some of the early sort of, if you went back 20 years ago, there was people trying it here and in the UK and using straw and stuff like that, and it's basically a haven for slugs, is right, and it causes, yeah, a lot of issues. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So then in that winter, I kind of found Charles Dowding for the first time, and I just binged everything that Charles Dowding made, and I bought, I think, 3 or 4 of his books
Yeah.
over the course of 2 years, and planned everything out. And in 2021, I started no dig gardening with woodchip and compost and cardboard to suppress the weeds. Just laying down
Yeah.
cardboard, then compost on top of the cardboard, and then wood chip on the
Yeah.
pots. And I had more success than I could have dreamed of. It was just amazing.
Mm.
Um, and that started to reinvigorate the soil as well after we had drilled it up, and yeah.
And I suppose when you started on that first year with the plough that you'd taken out of the ditch, or the potato seeder that you'd taken out of the ditch, so obviously the ground was tilled up and all the rest of it. You probably had very good success in that first year, I would imagine. Anyway.
Yeah, it was good. It was very dry that year. Do you remember 2020? We had a very
No, it
dry
was. Yeah.
spring,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
like you'd water the drills, and it'd evaporate by the time you got to the end of the drill. Like, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just the amount of watering that had to be done. So there was a lot less watering with when there was that ground cover of compost.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and also a drill, like, it's kind of funny, we grow in drills in Ireland in summer, but we tend to have droughts in Ireland in summer, like, so like all the water is sitting down. If you're growing in the winter, maybe like you kind of want your water in the trenches, but in the
Yeah.
summer you want your water, to stay on. So we've a fascination with having raised beds and drills in Ireland, raising crops up in Ireland, whereas
Yeah.
in
Well, I
the
think.
summer you're better have them, you're kind of looking for water.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I think
I've
that's definitely it's a I suppose it's tradition that has been sort of incorporated from agriculture essentially. It's like a lot of traditions, crop rotation, all these things have been sort of shifted into a smaller scale from agriculture, and they don't, as you said, they don't necessarily translate properly into gardening. And definitely drills is one that, with the odd exception, there's no real need for them. And definitely when it comes to the what you said about moisture, ground beds with compost or organic matter of some sort really perform much better in dry periods. So yeah, it's that's our fascination. I guess it has translated across and from agriculture, but it's not necessarily the right way to be growing.
mm, yeah.
So from there, then you started into no dig and immediately found success.
Yeah, and uh, yeah, just pushed it further. Started growing. We planted our food forest, and at the beginning of 2021 in March,
Mm.
and we just got fruit trees. My wife and I, we got fruit trees and nut trees and various natives, and just mixed them all together, down one row down the north side of the field, and started putting in micro food forests at the edges of my annual beds. So uh, yeah, just to attract beneficial insects, predators, and pollinators. So plants like calendula and borage, cornflowers, letting stuff like parsley, stuff that's in the umbellifera, in the carrot family, go to flower to
Yeah.
attract things like soldier beetles, which are great predators against aphids, that sort of thing. And then to have a production there as well, I have black currants and gooseberries and a few blueberry bushes and a pear pear trees and apple trees and cherry trees.
Brilliant.
So
And
just a mixture.
you're having a super year this year with fruit, I guess, are you?
Yeah, it's just an incredible year.
Yeah.
It's just I work in a native tree nursery as well, and just collecting hawthorn and like it's just dripping off the trees this year. It's
It's
incredible. It's gonna be
unbelievable.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
they say it's the sign of a cold winter to come.
Oh,
So we'll test that hypothesis
yeah, yeah,
as
time
it
will tell.
occurs.
You always hear these theories, and then sometimes they're, yeah, who knows? Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. But I've never seen a year where everything just has, fruit wise particularly, has just performed so brilliantly. With no late
Yeah.
frosts, obviously, so that was a huge help. But it's,
Yeah, and there was no wind in spring. It was just such a mild spring, I think.
yeah,
Was the
yeah, really, really, really a perfect spring. Yeah, for sure. Um, so the garden as it is today, so you have the food forest and the no dig beds are sort of separate, or at one end of it, is it, and or what way is that in terms of
So at the
structure?
moment, I expanded from where it was. I over the course of the 3 years that we were doing the market garden, I quadrupled the growing space, and I made kind of 20 beds, 25-meter long beds, 75 centimeters wide. So standard market garden beds, but shorter. Most
Yeah,
market garden beds are usually could be up to 30 meters. I went for five
yeah,
meter beds and broke them up with kind of borders of micro food forests, which were acting as insect attractor, like
yeah,
highways pretty much. And then I put a
yeah.
pond in the
Corridors.
center. Yeah, corridors, that's the word. Yeah.
Hmm.
I put a pond in the center. I have 3 ponds. I put 3 ponds in over the course of 3 years. One with plastic, one with no liner, and one with bentonite clay.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and
Uh,
the one,
and is
yeah.
bentonite clay, is that natural in your area?
No, well, it was bought in. It's a volcanic clay.
Yeah.
I think. Uh, I'm not sure where it comes from, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
But
there
it's
is some within Ireland. There are certain areas. It's not bentonite clay then, obviously, but there's certain clays in Ireland that will
blue
work.
clay.
Yeah, kind of a, not sure what the name of it is, but it's kind of a blue, like a putty type clay,
Yeah,
and it's supposed to be very good for ponds. But no, I thought that's what you were talking about.
yeah. If you can find that when you're digging a pond, you've hit
Yeah,
gold
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. It's
But yeah, my ponds are all very small, like so I wouldn't have gotten anywhere near that. I kind of got
yeah,
down to the subsoil and took a little bit more out, or about I went down about a meter, and I'd say it's about with all the you know stuff falling into it, it's about half a meter at this stage.
yeah, yeah.
I could
And
almost breathe.
just as a matter of interest, because I covered the creation of a wildlife pond only a couple of weeks ago, but just out of curiosity, so prior to putting in the ponds, was there frogs in your garden that you're aware of?
No, and still no frogs,
Still no
unfortunately.
frogs.
Yeah. What my problem is with my ponds is I have the diving water beetle,
Right.
which is a native beetle with native water beetle, and it eats the tadpoles.
Oh
Yeah.
no. Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
that's why.
they're ugly fellas. Yeah, they're big lads, and the larvae are even uglier. The larvae are like that long, like, and they're
That's
just this big shrimp, and then they turn into this like roundy lad with kind of pincers and
right.
yeah,
I'm
swimming
not familiar
tackle.
with it. I'm not familiar with him, but
Yeah, they're
so aside from frogs, then how long did it take, say, to get insect
But
life to?
we have the bees use it for water, the birds use it as a bath and for water. We have dragonflies. Like there's two
So much life.
dragonflies that are constantly around my one of my ponds. I have two red dragonflies and they're
Brilliant.
constantly going at it. Yeah, I have a perch in the middle of it that's just an old cardoon stalk that's after falling into it, and I left it there. And that perch is their favorite spot. There's kind of a territorial fight over that perch
Yeah.
between the dragonflies. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And with hedgehogs, like if I go around the garden in the dark, I have to bring a torch in case I kick a hedgehog, like, yeah, which, yeah, there used to be a few, but now I'd say there's like they're territorial as well. So I'd say we're at max capacity for hedgehogs,
Right.
which they're great slug eaters as well. So, and
Yeah,
I've
for sure.
no slugs at all this year. Like
That's,
it's just the balance has really came into. Um, it's a lot wilder this year as well because we stopped doing the market garden. My wife and I went to Taiwan at the end of 2023, and we're there for a year. So we shut down the market garden at that stage, and it's gotten a lot more wild. And I'm just kind of it's more of a food forest. It's more what my original intention to have a perennial garden with small annual fields, if you will, like small
yeah.
fields within a perennial space, a perennial food forest.
And are you still practicing in these little spaces? Are you still practicing no dig then or not?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no dig, compost, cardboard, suppress weeds, and
Mm.
wood chip pots. I think that's the best way. If for for our well-known, our commercial annuals that we're well used to growing, like carrots and peas and cabbage and stuff that needs a little bit of care and attention, that doesn't need to be competing with
Yeah.
grass, and you need to have a little bit of care and attention to those to get success and to get good success with them. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and especially to get establishment, that's the big thing, I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah,
So talk us through then what is well, we might just talk then in a little while about how somebody would go about adding, because you're studying permaculture for 15 years as well, and you've studied it in you've studied it in a few places, I suppose. You've gone to a couple of courses, you told me, so there's going to be different principles, but we might chat about that in a minute. But within this food forest now, so you mentioned nut trees, so I presume you've hazelnut, um, and the different fruit trees. So tell us all about the all of that, and then maybe perennials. Have you perennial vegetables in there? All the kind of crops that you're growing at the moment from this food forest, within this food forest.
yeah. Now the food for I kind of uh, I ignored it for a few years. I was more focused on the market garden for a few years. So I got the trees in, and the trees are well established. And I'm now putting in more of a herb layer. So, like in a food forest, it's different from an orchard, say,
Yeah,
in that it tries to replicate a natural forest where there isn't just a line of trees with
yeah.
grass in between. It's canopy trees, dwarf trees, shrubs, climbing layers, herbaceous layers, root layers. And I think I'm probably missing one or two.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
but
there's
it's essentially mimicking a natural forest in the various layers. So,
yeah, and
um,
it's chop and drop. So you have it's not all just productive trees. You need some nitrogen fixing trees.
yeah,
So in Ireland, great ones are alder, which is a nitrogen fixing tree. It's not in the legume family. Some people probably are aware of legumes and how they fix nitrogen
yeah,
using atmospheric nitrogen, converting it with the mycorrhizal fungi.
hmm,
So alder does that as well. Then there's another shrub called Eleagnus, which is great, and then clovers on the herbaceous layer. And these nitrogen fixing plants and non nitrogen fixing plants like comfrey, which has a long root which goes down and can go up to 10 meters underground apparently,
no,
which is crazy.
10 meters is crazy. Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it. I've heard of
So
it
I've
being
heard,
deep, but I've never heard of it being
yeah,
10 meters. But wow, yeah,
I
that's
could it could be
incredible.
10 feet. I could be remembering that wrong.
It's a
Yeah,
long way
it's
anyway,
long anyway. Yeah,
whichever
yeah,
way
it
it is. Yeah,
goes down a good bit anyway, and pulls up all those micronutrients in the subsoil, and you chop and drop that.
yeah,
So you chop it, leave the roots in the ground, and put it down as a mulch, as a rough mulch under your productive plants,
yeah.
and they grow back, and that's your fertilizer.
Hmm. So in terms of fruiting trees, then you have apple, plum, cherry. I think you mentioned pear, um,
Yep.
and then
Medlars. We've I just got some Japanese wine berries in the shrub layer with raspberries and boysenberries, which are a thornless blackberry, pretty much.
mhm.
the blueberries don't do so well in Kilkenny. We're alkaline soil here, so
Yeah.
uh, but I've gotten a few. It works, but it's not, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be selling them around.
Yeah, you have to probably add pine needles around the base or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And perennial, have you perennial veg at all?
Perennial veg. So like, there's Good King Henry, which is a perennial spinach, but yeah, a lot of like, there's so many things that people say are edible, and then you go and like, are it's hard to beat nice spinach, and
Yeah, yeah,
nice
yeah.
cabbage, nice red cabbage, nice Brussels sprouts, these tended vegetables that we've procured over the years and we've bred over the years to be fit for human consumption. And yeah, like nettles are good. Nettles are one thing I'll give the wild eaters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
Brilliant. In terms of, and
But there are plenty though. There are like there's lots of, if you're stuck, there's lots of things to be eating. Uh,
yeah, there's
and
all,
lots of things you could put in your food forest for if things go awry, if the food systems break down, or if
yeah,
the
you'll
system.
have lots of it. I understand exactly what you're saying in terms of perennial veg. I've tasted perennial spinach before. Yeah, it's not the same as an annual fresh spinach at all.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I suppose the perennial kale I haven't tasted. I do often wonder, does that be the same? Just if you think of something that's constantly growing in the ground, you're not going to get that. Well, in my opinion, you're not going to get that real fresh.
Yeah.
That
Get the
re
young shoots maybe.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah. But no, it is good to have those things. I personally don't have. There's not many great suppliers or good suppliers of perennial vegetables in Ireland anyway. And out of interest, I was looking for them a couple of years ago, and I'm finding it hard to find anybody that was growing them. There's some great growers and great nurseries of them in the UK, but they can't send plants over here.
Yeah.
But
A bit of a shout
um,
out to gardensforlife.ie,
yes,
Martin and
I've come across
Roscommon.
it. Yeah, he
Yeah.
does. Jerusalem artichoke. He does a
Yeah.
good few cuttings of those type things. Yeah, so I have come across Martin before, and yeah, he does definitely some of the ones that I'd be interested in. The walking onions is another one that I was.
Yeah, I have those as well. Yeah, yeah.
And how did
Again,
they?
I haven't actually bothered to try them. I've just let them get established. But I've always had good onions.
Yeah, yeah,
I have nice shallots there that like I grew from seed, and I saved the seed from last year, and there wasn't a lot of work in it. But if there's one year that I forget to grow the shallots, I'll
you'll
have the
have
Egyptian
those.
walk.
Yeah, yeah. And how do they like? Are they farming a decent sized onion or what's?
Oh no, they're very small. Like they're only
Yeah, yeah.
like that. Like there's some that are bigger than others. Maybe you could kind of propagate those bigger ones if you wanted, and you might, like the
Mm,
same with garlic. Like if you get a big garlic clove, you can grow that into a nice big bulb next year, and the bigger
mm,
the clove, the bigger the bulb. So maybe
yeah,
you could keep, like that's how all the domesticated varieties came about. They were all original. They were all
yeah,
wild plants originally, but we just kept on breeding them further.
yeah,
They're less
yeah.
seeds and more meat in the tomatoes. And
Yeah, well, maybe for me the kale one could be interesting because I don't love kale. We don't consume huge amounts of it, so to be sowing it kind of a couple of times a year for the
if
limited
you're
amount.
making a risotto, get get kale, olive oil, Parmigiano Reggiano,
Yeah,
and walnuts, and saute all that with butter. Then put in the kale, your garlic as well, Parmigiano Reggiano, and walnuts, and just saute that, and just have it with your risotto. It's gorgeous. That's
sounds
that's my
good. Sounds good.
that's my favorite one. Yeah,
We, we-
plenty of oil. You need plenty of plenty of butter and plenty of
yeah.
cheese.
Well, we shouldn't be talking about food at the end of the day because we might have to cut short here and I'll have to head for the kitchen. But no, that sounds brilliant. But no, kale is one that I don't love, but I could imagine that perennial kale would be ideal because at least then, whenever you would take the fancies for it to be there, as opposed to I have seed and I find that I don't sow it very often because I don't know, I just don't love it. So,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
that does sound
it's
isn't
easy.
it? It's lovely to hear recipes that are especially for things like kale or courgettes is another one. Everyone has gluts of courgettes. I've heard some good recipes over the last year that are different than anything I've heard before. So yeah, it's good to hear some sort of different angles on them to try and make them taste a little bit better, I guess. Let's talk about the principles of permaculture. If somebody wants to start practicing, and I know there's sort of different people and different principles and different ideologies within permaculture, but just even the basics of permaculture. If somebody wants to start implementing more, permaculture principles within their own gardens, give us some of the basics as you see it. And you've studied a couple of different courses, and you follow one main methodology now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, permaculture, it was first coined by Bill Mollison, who was an Australian, Tasmanian man, and David Holmgren, who
Yeah.
was his student. And that's the permaculture that I follow. That's, in my opinion, what permaculture is. And it's been co-opted a little bit in at times on the internet, but it's all based off of the permaculture design manual by Bill Mollison,
Yeah.
which is somewhere behind me there. And the principles, there's three main principles of people care, earth care, and fair share. And those are the three main, objectives, the ethics of permaculture. So, you're not putting down harmful chemicals into the soil, because that would be, against the earth care ethic, and you're not exploiting anyone, because that would be against the people care ethic. And and the return of surplus or fair share is the return of the resources to the ground. There's no waste in permaculture. Everything is recycled in a way. There's no, if I have animals, there's no waste product from them. Dung is seen as obviously a resource. Everything is seen as a resource. If you have everything is composted, and you try and maintain a cyclical system. But the main thing that people, I find, forget about permaculture is a design system. At its core, it's a design system, and it's so you are observing your site, and you are creating a design that is the most efficient way to do what you want to do. So you think about your client or yourself, who you're designing the site for. Say it's a family of 4, you want to grow enough vegetables for that family of 4 and grow them in a way that they are able to maintain the work, so that it's sustainable for their lifestyle. If they're working full time, if they're all working full time, they're not going to be able to be growing all their own vegetables. But you do as much as you can with that. So you're working on a system of zones. So closest to the house is zone 0. Then zone 1 is your kitchen garden, your herb garden, which is where you visit every single day, and you want to get your herbs, like, so you can just run out. You say you need your rosemary or your parsley, that's where it is. You can just run out of the kitchen in time. And I spend most of my time when I'm cooking, I spend running around the garden. I spend half of it at the cooker. So running around the garden and bringing back stuff and cutting it up. So then as you go out further, you have your zone 2, which is maybe where you keep your chickens. You're visiting that maybe once a day, or just to shut in the chickens. Then your zone 3 is a bit further away. You're visiting that maybe once every 3 days. And that's where you keep your vegetables that you need watered, more perennial things. Then zone 4, you might keep larger crops like apple trees that only fruit once a year, that you only need to really visit
a couple of times in the year.
A couple of times, and maybe do a bit of pruning and harvesting and that sort of thing. And then your zone 5, which is practically wild. So that's as Jeff Lawton says, that's the great teacher, where you go and observe how nature is working. So
right, even this is good now because that's the first time somebody has explained those zones. That so your zero is right directly around the house. One is your everyday use herb garden type. Three, I think you said, was your likes your chickens or whatever.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, four, vegetable garden. Five, fruit garden, was it? And then six was wild. I probably have to skip a zone there, but
No,
yeah,
it's five in total. Yeah, five
five
is
in
the last
total.
one. It's yeah,
Yeah,
and like that depends on the your lifestyle as well. Like how often you're visiting that part of the garden, or how often you intend to visit that part of the garden.
yeah,
If
uh,
if you're only there in at your place and you're working off site during the day, it might be different.
yeah,
You might be living in an apartment and you're you only have a zone one. You might
yeah,
be
yeah,
just a balcony.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's different. So you're not talking about a design system there as such. You're talking about growing in a certain way within a balcony or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Um, Other principles, and correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of permaculture, is that every plant going in can't just have a singular function, or it's not just for aesthetic. There's typically two to three functions per plant.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong on that, but like you mentioned earlier on, the alder tree that's going to set nitrogen, it's also going to be useful in a wet area. It'll help to balance out a wet area. It'll be obviously a haven for certain types of biodiversity. Um, am I correct in saying that each plant needs to have multifunctions?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, shading other trees. Like a chicken doesn't just give eggs; it also gives manure. It can give feathers if you want. It can give meat. It can give it can attract be good for children. It could be that
Yeah,
it could be an
yeah,
educational site, and they could be doing something like that. They could be petting chickens, and they could be so everything is in terms of function, and everything is stacked on top of each other, and everything is working off of each other, like in
yeah,
nature, because there's no such thing as a standalone thing in nature that everything's doing multiple things.
yeah. So just to sort of think about your garden, Bosco's garden, and now you have the food forest, but you're also practicing no dig where you're putting down your cardboard and layering your compost on top as, per Charles Dowding's, so, well, it's not his teachings, but it's the one that has become famous because
Yeah, he
of
popularized it.
that he
Yeah, yeah.
popularized, yeah, for sure. So in a scenario like that, all of the compost, I guess, has to be produced on site, is ideally
um,
to follow if you're going
Ideally,
to stick within the permaculture model
yeah.
while practicing no dig, I guess.
At the moment, the our donkeys are producing all of our compost.
Brilliant.
While I was doing the market garden, so I was exporting stuff from the garden. I was selling at a farm shop on site, and I was so energy in my was leaving the site, so I
Hmm.
had to be bringing in energy to replace that. In a sense, I was bringing in spent mushroom compost to make those garden beds. And I'm rethinking the amount of compost that I'm going to use in the future. Like I've just after visiting
Hmm.
Tulgi in
Done more country school.
Dunmore Country School, yeah,
Yeah.
and he's doing great work there. He doesn't put any compost. He's all his annual beds are chop and drop like in a food forest. So
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by what he's doing there. So
Yeah.
I would like to be using less compost and more chop and drop. Now that the garden has actually found the balance as well, and I had very few slugs this year, I've got lots of hedgehogs, lots of things to be eating the slugs. So, and I've got an aerobic soil. That's a big thing about slugs. So when you're doing no dig, you have aerobic soil, and slugs are attracted to the smell of anaerobic activity. They're attracted to decaying leaves. It's anaerobic.
Yeah.
So, and that's why beer traps work for slugs, because they smell that anaerobic fermentation and that attracts them, and they go into the beer trap. So when you've aerobic soil, that's living soil, you should have a balance of slugs. You want some slugs, you want some of everything, you want some of all pathogens, but you want a balance of everything. So you want
Yeah.
some aphids, but you also want ladybirds and soldier beetles that are going to eat them.
Yeah, you
You
can't have
want,
one without the other.
yeah,
It is a balance.
yeah, you want some weeds. Weeds are just uh, Martin in Gardens for Life. He said it was weeds. He tells his son that weeds are just plants that we have enough of. Yeah, yeah.
It's a good way of putting it. Just to go back on that one for a second. So slugs, and you're right, they do thrive they don't thrive in an no-dig garden. How, and I'm familiar with Tangai's chop and drop. So, and it works brilliantly. I practice it. I've beds that I'm putting garlic into in a couple of weeks, and I put a layer of fresh grass clippings on that the other day to allow it to break down over the next 6 weeks before, or 8 weeks before I put in the garlic. Very thin layer of that. But in relation to slugs, are they not attracted to that um, fresh matter breaking down, decaying matter breaking down there?
Um, yeah, but
You
there are
have
less of them.
some, yeah, less of
Yeah,
them, yeah. So
yeah,
it's a balance thing.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
and uh, I'm mainly focusing on growing for ourselves now, so I'm less worried about if there's a few holes in my spinach. Yeah,
yeah.
I was very very precise when I was growing veg for growing for other people and for restaurants especially, where they really care about how it looks. And I wasn't too bad. Like I had wonky carrots. We always had wonky baby carrots, and we're proud of them because
Yeah,
they were sweet as hell. They were just gorgeous. So yeah, what was
yeah.
I saying?
Yeah, it's interesting, all right. And that is the difference, I suppose, when you're growing just for yourself now. It's
Yeah,
less important what they look like at the end before they get cooked or consumed. I suppose it's less important. So
yeah.
you've completely finished the market garden part now. So you don't sell anything anymore.
No, just growing for ourselves and a few of the neighbors, and give a few bits away.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
might do an honesty box in the future. It's a lot of work. It was a great experience to do the market garden and do the restaurants, and like we had a Friday shop. We set up a Friday shop here in a tent, and people were coming, and it was great
brilliant.
meeting everyone, and it was a great place to get top quality vegetables. But yes, it was a lot of work, and my main passion is filmmaking. I think, and I think I learned from that, and it made me a better filmmaker. It kind of gave me direction as a filmmaker of where I want to go and what I want to make films about, and that's what
Yeah,
I've been doing over the past while, is making films about other people growing, because I think that's my main thing, my main skill that I have to give to the world
yeah,
is probably
yeah.
more valuable. Like there's plenty of people who are growing stuff, but there's very few people who know about growing stuff and who can make films. So that's what I want to do, and share how all this works, because I was blown away by that's why I wanted to do it, is just to see if it worked. I didn't put soap on my aubergines when I had greenfly,
Hmm.
like some people put soap, but the soap actually kills the ladybird larvae.
Yeah.
So like your most natural organic soap made by Tibetan monks is
Hmm.
still going to kill the ladybird larvae. So you just let the ladybird or let the green fly do their thing. Just let them
Yeah.
come, and
But it's very much a trust thing when you're doing
yeah,
that, and
and
that is the
yeah,
challenge, is to have that trust. Kind of a good example here over the last couple of weeks is I have the bed of Brussels sprouts, coming along a little bit too quickly actually for Christmas, but they're there, and the aim was to have them for Christmas. And about 3 weeks ago, I went out and they were absolutely walking out the gate with caterpillars. And I purposely have a wildflower meadow, and one of the aims of that was attracting. I've loads of birds in the garden anyway, but it was to bring more in and blue tits particularly for caterpillars. But I was looking at these Brussels sprouts and they were really, really struggling. I've never seen so many caterpillars on it. And I was looking at them and it said, right, I'll leave it a day or two. 2 days later, there was less leaves on it and it was getting worrying. 3 days later, and then I said, right, I'm going to have to do something. And I went out the next day, which was about a week after the first time I saw them. They were after decimating the plants at that point. But when I went out, there was none left. And now the plants are growing along fine. So the blue tits
Mm.
had obviously found them after a day or
Yeah.
two and just basically wiped them out. So there's none there now, and the Brussels sprouts are growing perfectly again. But it's a real trust thing because the natural instinct when you see that and when you see that damage being done to something that you've put a little bit of effort into and put a bit of time into, you're watching them, you're tending to them, and then there's something there taking it, and you're going to say, like, the natural response is to do something, to take an action to get rid of it. But
Mm.
if you're able to just stick it and have that small little bit of trust, it does balance out.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah.
comes with experience, I think. And yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
It does,
because
it
it's
does work
not,
out. Like their stuff is very resilient.
yeah, for sure. As I said, the sprouts are going to be perfect, but they're going to be ready a little bit
I'd
early. But other than that, they'll be great.
I'd always keep a net over my brassicas though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
well,
like you know,
I have in the past, but for the last couple of years since the wildflower meadow has really has
mm.
really come on, I haven't.
Yeah, I've gotten
And
away with I've purple sprout and broccoli, I got away with it before. They
yeah,
were absolutely obliterated in the summer, and then when February came around, I plenty of purple sprout and broccoli. So
yeah. No, it is. It's a trust thing. You mentioned filmmaking, and that kind of leads us on to the next thing. I know you're busy and have been busy over the last few months, and you've been doing some work. I won't ask you to name all 10, but you've been basically doing recording videos on some of the best sort of permaculture stroke regenerative gardens across Ireland and featuring some some brilliant gardening personalities. Some of which have been on the podcast. You mentioned Klaus Leitenberger, obviously Tanga, you've mentioned a couple of times there, Dunmore Country School, he's been on before. Um, but tell us about that project. I know you've one or two, maybe two released at this stage, and there's 10 in the series in total. So tell us about the idea of that and what's to come. Is there anything kind of any standout ones? They're all good, I'm sure, but
yeah, yeah, I've every single one that I visited, I was very impressed, and everyone had something original to contribute to it. We started with Oran Crow in Roscommon, and that video is already up. And he has done a course that I did as well with Jeff Lawton, the online
yeah.
permaculture design course. Jeff Lawton was Bill Mollison's student, and they co-taught together for many years. And he's focusing, Oran Crow, he's focusing mostly on his earthworks and real, uh, what I would call proper permaculture. He's catching his water on contour. So the contour lines that are running through his land, he's catching them on swales and running them into dams, and then trying to slow down the water from the top of his site to the lowest point of his site, and trying to catch all that water and put them into productive plants and trees.
Hmm.
And then we've done 2 regenerative farms, sheep and cattle one, which is up already with Finton White here in Kilkenny, and Fiorvia Farm in Portlaoise.
Portlaoise, yeah.
Yeah, Brendan Gwynnon, who's a brilliant guy. He has pigs. He has a forest there he bought a few years ago, and has pigs in it, and he has cattle there and chickens, and he's just working in the woods with animals and
Hmm.
giving animals the best life. And I got some steaks off them, some ribeye steaks, and they were just incredible, real dark,
Yeah,
plenty of marbling in them. They were gorgeous.
brilliant.
Yeah, best of the best there. And Klaus Leitenberger, who's just got a place up in Mayo. They're starting a school up there, and
Yeah.
it's just incredible. He's after built a walled garden from red brick. It's all red brick inside, and it's just incredible with this beautiful greenhouse, glass greenhouse, and Klaus is just a world of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah,
And Tongi as well, in Dunmore Country School. What a great place.
yeah.
Already mentioned them. Yeah, and Organic Gardens up in Donegal, which is brilliant. They have a little, they run courses up there on permaculture. Really nice guys, Joanne and Milo up there.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, familiar with Joanne actually. Now that you mentioned that earlier on, but I didn't make the connection. Yeah, so that's brilliant. Yeah. So all of these, they're videos, anything from half an hour up to 45 minutes long, I think, most of them.
yeah,
And you're looking at the gardens, talking to the owners, talking to talking about their principles and how they do things within the garden. It's an amazing series. So it's on your YouTube channel, which is Bosco's Garden. So tell us about all about where people can find that, and it's
yep. Go to YouTube, put in Bosco's Garden,
and
and
subscribe there. You have
subscribe.
12,000.
Be sure to subscribe.
Yeah, yeah, you get all the new ones.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to be putting up one every month over the next year, and we'll hopefully have more to contribute after that as well. We have a few other spots in mind to go
Brilliant.
to next summer, especially the season's just winding down here, so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to kind of strike while the iron's hot during the summer and get as many done as we can, and then edit them throughout the winter,
yeah, yeah.
put them
Um,
up.
what's the sort of future for Bosco's Garden itself, not the YouTube channel, the garden itself? What's the
So the garden will become a perennial garden, growing with annual gardens within it.
Mhm.
I'm going to split it up into. I'm so inspired. I've after visited all these places now in August, 10
You've all
places I've
these
been,
ideas.
and I've just my mind is just. So I have to go back to the design room and yeah, but it'll be much more of a perennial space. I was thinking in terms of a commercial garden before as a market garden. I had four blocks, uh, much inspired by Jean-Martin Fortier in
Yeah,
Quebec. Those guys, like the market gardeners, Richard Perkins and the like, who were
yeah,
doing market gardening, and it's a commercial thing. But I was trying to incorporate permaculture as part of that. Uh, like Jean-Martin Fortier still uses like organic pesticides and fertilizers
hmm,
rather than chemical fertilizers, which is what organics, you know, does. Commercial organics is just it's conventional agriculture using herbal, uh,
yeah. Well,
plant-based
yeah, and
fertilizers and pesticides.
they are market gardeners as well, so it's a different thing. They're producing to sell products, so
Yeah,
it's or to sell produce. It's a different thing, I suppose. So yeah.
yeah,
So now you're going to develop that and turn more onto the perennial side using. You're going to be moving away, I guess, a little bit from the Charles Dowding style approach. Um,
yeah. There will be parts of it, and I think
yeah.
that's what permaculture is. I think that's the main point of permaculture. It incorporates all of these like regenerative farming and holistic management, holistic mob grazing for animals, no dig gardening, uh, aquaculture. All of these are just parts of permaculture, and
Mhm.
that's like it's one good way of describing permaculture. It's like a wardrobe with all these things like engineering and renewable energies and
Mhm.
all sorts of eco building. All of these are just things in the wardrobe of permaculture that can be put into a design, like can be implemented in a design. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, for sure. It's been a really interesting chat. Nice to hear the story of the garden, I guess. and to hear, I suppose your principles, and it's interesting, how you have a set of principles or principles of permaculture that you follow, and it's interesting to hear, when you're talking to these gardeners around Ireland, that there's different ideas now that you're going to take and incorporate into your garden. Considering, I think you said you started in 2012, was it?
Yeah, yeah,
With
originally.
yeah, so and you hadn't grown much up until that. It really looks like a brilliant garden to have come that far in that space of time. So yeah, really well done on that. In terms of the YouTube channel, it's, as I say, I dived into it last week. There's some you could spend a lot of time in there. There's some brilliant videos, and there'll be more going up over the next while. So Bosco's Garden, definitely check out that. So Shane, it's been a really interesting chat, and thank you very much for coming on Master My Garden podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me. Cheers, John.
So that's been this week's episode. A huge thanks to Shane for coming on. Definitely check out the YouTube channel, and the guys are also on Instagram as well. So just check out Bosco's Garden. There's some, as I said, those videos, story of the garden, those long form videos about these brilliant gardens around Ireland. As I said, the likes of Klaus has been on before, on the podcast before, Tanguy, and to see the video versions and to hear their stories and what they're doing is really worthwhile. So check out Bosco's Garden on YouTube. Very good channel to check out for anyone that's interested in permaculture and just in general in terms of gardening. There's some brilliant tips and, I suppose, stories. There's brilliant stories there of how different people are gardening and growing across the country. So that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.